Welcome everyone to the Model Frontier. We're here today with Pack 20 of Agora models Build the RMS Titanic. If you're new to the channel, make sure you smash that subscribe button and ring that notification bell so you don't miss a second of any of this great content. So, last pack we did quite a lot with not a lot of parts. We finished up the stand, got all the electrics in there, and we brought the bottom section of the hull together, so we're getting an idea of just how big this thing is. This pack, we actually have quite a lot to do. There's a lot of parts we're gonna be putting together, and we're gonna be putting something pretty big into our ship finally. We got a lot to do. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it. Before we do though, if you remember the end of last video, your Titanic trivia question, just how long after hitting the iceberg was the first lifeboat lowered? The answer to that is it was an hour and 5 minutes before the first lifeboat got launched. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that are like, it can't have been that long. That's crazy. You gotta bear a few things in mind. Number one, it took them some time to determine that the ship was gonna sink. If you watched the videos, the transition scenes, it was about 15 minutes before Andrews told everyone the ship was gonna sink. They then had to swing out 14 lifeboats without having done any drills. They had to swing all the lifeboats out and get them ready to load. Then they had trouble getting them loaded because people obviously didn't think the ship was sinking, so they didn't want to leave the Titanic. So the fact that it took them an hour and 5 minutes to launch the first lifeboat, and when you consider the fact that they actually got to launch 18 of the 20 lifeboats off the ship, I think that's a testament to how good they did, and I don't think anyone could have done any better. So here we are with stage 111 of this pack. And obviously we're going to be focusing in on this part of the ship right here. Now I do have mine on its stand because it lets you have a nice semi-sturdy place on the table without having to hang a bunch of your ship off. Before we get going though, we all know the story of Ida and Isidore Straus as it comes to the Titanic, how she stayed with her husband even though she was offered a place in the lifeboat and he refused to go before any other men did. Very honorable people. How many years were Ida and Isidore Straus actually married? Was it A, 36, B, 41, or C, 46 years? We're going to answer that question at the end of the next stage. So here we have a relatively simple stage. We're just going to take the last piece of our keel and we're going to attach it to the hull. Now, since this is going into metal, I am going to get my oil ready. To do that, they've given us these special PM screws, which are flanged, but they're also very flat up top. There's no curve. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get this piece up here. And I'm focusing in on these three screws right here. Now you can kind of push everything together and it will sort of hold itself in place. At least enough for us to get some screws into it. So the first thing they want us to do is they want us to put screws into these three up top towards the bow. Once we got those 3 in, they want us to go down the starboard side and put these 5 in next. Like that, and then once we got those in place, we're going to put the last 5 in right along the port side. Go. You definitely want to make sure you get a screwdriver in here that you definitely can get a lot of torque on this, because you really want to bring these together and make sure, you know, it may feel like you're going to strip these, but you want these parts especially to be as tight as you possibly can get them, because now your keel is complete. And with that is it for stage 111. So here we are, guys. Now technically the next stage would have us putting on this piece of the ship. But we're going to do things a little differently for a couple of reasons. Number one, we got a lot of stuff we're going to be doing on this part, before we actually put it on. So we want to make sure to cover that in a great amount of detail. And number two, I just think that our next thing that we're going to be doing makes more sense to do without that piece on. So we're skipping ahead now to stage 114, and we're going to be bringing out a friend we haven't seen in a long time. That's right. We're bringing out the engines. Now, the first thing they want us to do, I've already done, is take out all the propeller shafts, all 3 of them. They also want us to unscrew these 3 supports. Take them off. So let's get those out of here. There we go. Now with those off, I'm gonna actually unplug it from this tester box. And now, the moment we've been waiting for a while. It's now time to put the engines into the ship. And what we're going to focus on are these 2 points in the back here. If I pick up our engines and show you, they're going to be where these 2 points go in. If we get those right, the rest of the engine is going to fit perfectly where it needs to go. Now with this, you are going to have to kind of pry the ship open a little bit, so don't be afraid to do so. Hear that pop in there? Now that is in place. So now with that in place, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take 3 AP screws, and we're going to fit this piece in. Obviously, 2 are going to go in the back, and then there's 1. So 2 are going to go into the positions here. And then in these middle holes here, there is 1 that's going to go right into this section here. So let's go ahead and get these all screwed in here. And now with those in, we're going to be focusing in on this lower section here. We're going to put AM screws, 6 of them. 1, 2, 3. And then if I go up here, 4, 5, and 6. And of course, these are going to be coated in oil when they go in. So I'm going to get those, I'm going to get all 6 of these in, and I'll meet you back here. And there we go. Now, just like that, that engine room is in there. Now comes the one moment that I've personally been excited and waiting for. We've got our supports for the propeller shafts, basically the wings for the propellers. And they are going to go into the ship here. Now, there's 2 slats on either side. They're just going to go in there like that. Oh, hang on. Might help if you actually can see it. So they're going to go in like this on both sides of the ship. And they can only go in one way that makes sense. So you'll get it right, and they'll fit in there just nicely, just like that. So now with the wings in place, we've got these brackets to put in. And we're going to put them into the wings. So the way it's going to work is there are a couple lugs which are going to go into the holes here for this piece. We're going to have to kind of feel our way into it. Hang on. Right pain right here, so I'm trying to get this in there, guys. Hang on. Okay, maybe we should try the back one first. Let's see if we try this one first. Put that in with some AP screws, which we could use from the parts we took off before. go. And now we're going to put this bracket in on here. We're also going to be using AP screws for it. Now you can see with that, those wings are in place nice and secure. Next, we're going to need our propellers back. So since it's very visible, I'm going to show you using this shaft. So now we're going to want to feed our propeller shaft through. And you'll see it comes back into the ship. We're going to feed it through here, but we're not going to connect it right off the bat. Because they want us to put a bracer in between the two. In between. This is going to be very tricky to do. And I'm going to get this piece put in because I got to move my head around in here. So I'm going to put this piece in and I'll come back and explain to you what I've done. Alright, so with that collar piece, I found it's easiest to take off this bracer entirely. That way you can get the collar and the shaft in. Because you can always put that bracer back on. And then you're going to hold it down. You're going to fix it in place with one of these MP screws. And I'm thinking we don't want these to be extra tight. So we're going to go ahead and put it in with an MP screw right here. Like that. Now I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Okay, and then lastly, you're going to take the central shaft and feed it through the last remaining hole, just like we did. You're going to feed it through all of this to get it in position. And we're going to also put a collar on this one. Tighten that down. with an MP screw. There we go. And even though we're tightening it down, again, the instructions do tell us not to over tighten it. Now I'm going to put these other bracer pieces back into place. And then they do give us a new one to use from the kit piece that they gave. The biggest difference is there is a groove for the central propeller shaft. So I'm going to put that one in because obviously that's the one they want us to use. So we're going to use it. With that, the engine room is installed. And if we come around here and we go down for a second, like that, if we hook everything up, our engine should work just fine. So let's take a look here. Okay, and if they seem like they're going a little slow, then what we can do, I'm going to go ahead and do here, is I'm just going to loosen these up a little bit. And there we go. Now that those are in place, and they are working, that is it. Officially for stage 114. And before we end this stage here, the answer to your Titanic trivia question, just how many years were Ida and Isidor Strauss married? Was it A, 36, B, 41, or C, 46 years? And the answer to that is they were married for B, 41 years of marriage. Now you know why Mrs. Strauss was not able to leave her husband on that fateful night. So here we are after all that work on our hull and with our engine room. We are now going to do stage 112. And before we open the box, because this is a big, impressive part that we're going to be doing here, your Titanic trivia question for this next 2 stages. What was the first newspaper to correctly report the Titanic's fate? Was it A, the Halifax Herald, B, the Boston Herald, C, the New York Times, or was it D, the Miami Herald? And the answer to that will be coming at the end of stage 113. So this is a piece we've been waiting for a while now. And I'm going to give it the gravitas it deserves. We're going to open the box and... ta-da! And that's right, it's the very back of the Titanic. It's got the nameplate and everything on it, which we're going to be talking about here. And it is the end. This is the very back of the ship. Think about it like this. This is the last section of the ship that went under on that fateful night. Now, visually, it looks okay. They did do a good job trying to get the detail plating going here. And then it just feels like they just kind of stopped. Like you could see they got to this point and then they just stopped here. They got to a certain point here and just kind of stopped. So we are going to fix that by adding some extra plates to it. And we're also going to replace the Titanic and the Liverpool with a set that'll match closer to what we have up front. Now again, there's nothing wrong with this part. There's nothing wrong with this set. And if you don't want to do any of the stuff you're going to see here, feel free to skip ahead to where we go and finish the actual stage here. But if you're still with me and you're up for this adventure, let's start. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead. Now Liverpool on here is flush. Titanic is not. It is raised. So what I'm going to go ahead and do first is I'm going to file this down so that we get this nice and smooth, just like we did on the 2 parts of the Ford nameplate. So I'm going to do that real quick and I'll be right back with you when I'm done. So just like that, we've got the nameplate off. Now normally, you know, I'd be saying rub this down, make sure it's all nice and smooth. We ain't doing that though, because we're going to actually put coverings over this. And the covering we're going to be using is this sheet of styrene hull plating, which I got from Midwest Model Shop. Now, you will want to use this template, which I'll link to in the description below. This is actually a template for the mini brass set, but it would, and you can use the mini brass for this. I chose this because A, it's cheaper, and B, it's a little easier to use and shape. But we're basically going to use this to number our plating. So obviously we're going to start with plate number 1, which is going to be this one. And we're just going to do a dry fit real quick. And what you might want to do with this particular plate is you may want to put a mark about halfway on it. So let me go do that real quick. Okay, so now why do we want to put a mark about midway on this? Because you can see here there is a groove, there is a line right here, right down the middle. This is it's important to get stuff right on this. So we're going to use this line as our middle line, And we're going to line it up here. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to put some glue on this piece. And then we're going to put this on. Line that up. And we're going to let that settle for a minute. See, I don't got that on there good. There. One of the good parts about this piece is there's a lip right here that you can use to kind of help with your curve. So that's always good. Now the next piece it tells us to put on, if we're looking at the thing, which I'll put this, I'll put the sheet up. Let me move this over a little bit. I'll put the template up on the screen here. So now we're going to put on piece number 2, which if we're looking at it this way, is going to be on this side. So if we're flipping it over, it's going to be on this side. Now, keep in mind, we need to note exactly how this piece is. So it's going to kind of go on following this curve. It's going to kind of sit on there like that. It's very hard to show you on this. I don't know if it's even going to come into focus. Let me see if I can bring this into focus here to show this to you. Maybe that'll work. Hang on. Okay, so there is a section here where it doesn't quite go down flush. That's telling us where we're covering up with this piece. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this over kind of like this. So, once again, take some glue, and we're going to just put some right along this edge here. And we're going to put this second panel on. Yes, we are going to want these to overlap just that little bit. So just like that. And then, obviously, we're going to do number 3, which is on this side. And it's just the same type of thing. There we go. And then we're just going to continue going one side the other, one side the other in this numbered order. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and show you how it looks when it's all done. Okay, so there we go, guys. And you can see now, even that already looks way better. So, this is another point where we're going to go ahead and say if you want to just leave it like this, go ahead and spray all of this your black. We'll go over putting, and then I'll link to putting the decals on in the description so that you got that part. But we're going to push this as far as this can go. So now if you're with me on that, let's get to it. Okay, so this first part, we're going to actually build it on this. And the key piece we want is this number 14 right here. This is a piece that's going to go here, and everything kind of builds off of this piece. So what we actually want to do is get our 1-to-1 scale page. So this is 1-to-1 scaling. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put 14 where it's going to go right here. So just like that. And now we're going to basically build this middle section here first on the paper here. So we want next piece 15. And we're just going to put the tiniest sliver of glue just on the edge there. And then we're going to put this on top of this piece just like we did with the one. There's a little bit of a groove there. So you're just going to want to kind of slip that on top like that. Stand by, hang on. Alright, and then we're going to do the same thing with piece 16, which is the other side here. And now we're going to do piece 17. Which is this piece with this little cutout for the rudder. And there's a dry fit, it's going to go on here. Like that. Once we got that in place, we're going to want part 18. And that's going to go as a dry fit. We're going to take this piece. It's going to just kind of fit right here. There we go, just like that. The next part that we're gonna now, before we continue on, we're gonna take a look at how this fits on the hull piece. I think that's going to look just great. So next, we're going to put on this piece here, because then we'll have a reference point. It's going to go on top of this piece. Just like that, we got the first part of this thing. So now let's go ahead and bring back our stern piece, and we're going to do another dry fit. I do like how that's looking. So now we're going to glue this piece. We're going to glue this whole section down. what we're gonna do is we're gonna do half at a time. I got my glue on that half. Let's make sure this is all good. We're gonna put this on, and again we gotta center it. Satisfied with how that's fitting. I'm gonna go on and glue the other side down. And there we go. So that's the first bit here. Now we're going to work on just one whole side, and it's basically just a matter of continuing the pattern to put the styrene plates in. So like this next one, fit right on here. And you just follow the instructions numbered, and then you go one at a time and get them all on. So I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera, and when I come back, you'll see how that all looks. Okay, so after a lot of gluing and sticking, there we are about halfway done. You can already see what a difference this detail will make. I mean, because there's the half as it comes in, and then there's the half that we just added all these plates onto. Now, obviously, I'm not gonna lie, there is some trimming you have to do along these edges just to get them in there nice. And although this is styrene, you may be tempted, you may be asking yourselves, should I use some heat to kind of help melt it down a little bit? Don't do that. You definitely do not want to do that, because I've actually tried that. It will cause wrinkles to appear, and it just won't look as nice. So once you're satisfied with how your first half looks, you're just going to repeat this whole thing again on the other side. And then we're going to take a look at it when it's all said and done. So go do that, and I will meet you back here. And just like that, there you go. All of those beautiful panels on there. All of them drilled out. And yeah, I've drilled out all the holes here, which is something you can choose to do. You can choose not to do. You may not have even gone this route. You may have just been satisfied with the section here. But that's really, up to you to decide. Taking this how far you want, that's part of the game here. Now, I will tell you this. These panels down here, you will have to kind of shave them off a little bit, because they will overhang. So you just kind of want to take, just like you take your scalpel and you just kind of shave them down a little bit. So kind of like that. We just shave them off just a bit here. And then that's it. Now we're ready to go paint this thing. And then I'll show you what it looks like all painted up. So there we go. Now we've got that all blackened, painted, and I've gone ahead and sealed it, because the next thing we need to do is we're going to focus in right into this section. And of course, we're going to be putting the Titanic nameplate on the back. So for this part, we're going to use the set from this decal set. Now again, this may or may not be available, so you're going to either have to find a decal set of your own, or get very good with a scalpel, with a very sharp bladed scalpel, to cut it in and paint it. Or if you're using the mini brass, it does come, if you do decide to use the mini brass version for this, which you could obviously do, it does have an option where this part is already etched with the Titanic name and everything, so you could use that as well. So right now I'm going to go ahead and cut these out. I'm going to cut them out. So you're going to be getting, if you have this sheet, you're going to be getting obviously the Liverpool and this curved Titanic right here. So go grab those and I'll meet you back here. Okay, so now one thing we're going to need to make sure we do is we need to leave that same, just like we did in the front, we need to leave about 1 millimeter of space here. So what we're going to do first is we're actually going to start with the littler of these, the Liverpool logo. And if we look on this part, the reason we're starting with this is it's so much easier, because it's just basically going to follow right where this lip is. So we're going to dry fit it, so it's going to fit kind of like that, right along the lip. So just like with any other decal, we're going to stick this in our water and let it get nice and wet. Okay, so once we got that, so once the decal starts coming off, we've got a little bit of water on the part here. So again, we're going to use the lip. We're just going to put it on following the curve of the lip. Once we got it on there, because we got enough water, we can adjust. And I'm gonna go get it flattened, so give me just a minute. There we go. So we got that on just nicely right where I want it to be. So we're just kind of following that curve. Now, the next one, the bigger word Titanic, we can see it's slightly more higher than the Liverpool, but it's not quite all the way up here. Because again, we do want to leave about 1 millimeter of space for these, for the stripe, which will go on eventually. So this is a part where I'm going to kind of eyeball it. But considering that the white part's going to go right here, I'm going to put the nameplate kind of in this area here. And you'll see what I mean when I actually get the nameplate off the decal sheet. Okay, so now that the word Titanic is sliding off just fine. I'm going to get that off. Again, I'm going to get a little bit of water where I want to put it. It's important that you put water on this so that you have some adjustment time. So something like that. Actually, I might want to move that down just a hair. There we go. I think that looks good. Now you want to use either a Q-tip or a microfiber cloth, and you kind of just want to pat dry as much of this as you can. So there we go. Now once you got the letters on all good and just how you want them, I like how that looks. I think that looks pretty good. Now you're going to want to let these dry. I'm going to go ahead and seal these up. And then we can continue with the actual build part of this stage. Okay, so now you've either done some of what we've gone through, done all of it, or you've done none of it. But this is the part where we are going to continue on with this stage. So now you're going to take your stern piece. We're going to put it on here. Nice and flush in there. Like that. And then we secure that down with 6 of the IM screws. Once all that's in place, that will be it for this stage.
Gentlemen, it has been a privilege playing with you tonight.
So after all that work in stage 112, we're going to continue on with stage 113, which is actually going to be relatively easy, because all we're going to be doing is adding the bulwarks right along this section of the hull. And first we got these two white pieces. They both, you can see exactly how they're going to go on. They're both going to fit right onto the hull like this. Just following the curve. You got the 3 spots here. And those are going to get held in place with 3 AM screws on each one. So once we got that in place, we got a small section that's going to go right in here. Just this piece here finishes it off. Just like that. And that's going to get held in place with a pair of IM screws. Just like that, this stage is done. So with this very cinematic shot of the Titanic itself, and a good look at the background for all the model frontier, your Titanic trivia question for this part: what was the first newspaper to correctly report the Titanic's fate? Was it A, the Halifax Herald, B, the Boston Herald, C, the New York Times, or was it D, the Miami Herald? And the answer is it was C. The New York Times was the first newspaper to correctly report the Titanic's fate. So with all that done with the hull, we're going to start working on building the remote for this thing. Now this is going to be important because obviously this is going to be how we're going to light this thing and make it make noise and do the smoke effects. Everything's going to be controlled from this remote. So it's important we get this right. So before we do, though, your Titanic trivia question is: what prompted J. Bruce Ismay to make changes in the Titanic's original design? Was it A, a magazine write-up? B, a dream inspired him? C, a trip on the Olympic? Or D, a tour of the Carpathia? That's a question we will answer for you at the end of the next and final stage of this pack. So here's all the parts we have for our remote, and we're first going to need, shove these aside, the first things we're going to need are these two, and we're basically going to line the lugs. We're going to line these lugs up with the holes here, and make sure your holes are all aligned, and we're going to pop this into place. And there is a certain shape to this, so it can only fit one way. There we go, just like that. And again, there's screw holes in this, but we won't need to but we don't even need to do anything because it does hold itself in rather nicely. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this thing, this is a work of genius by these guys doing this. And this is just going to pop into place here. Just like that. And again, it holds itself in place. We do want to make sure, it is in this orientation. Stop should be towards the top. Everything else should be, and everything else will be fitting in place fine. So now we have to put this aside. So we got this assembly we need, and we are basically putting the spring in between these 2 points here. So we got a spring, and it goes on the shorter end of this one. And we're going to want it like that. Next, we're going to take this piece here, and it's going to face this way, and we're going to put this inside. Now this is going to be a little bit of a tricky thing to do here, because we're going to have to get it in, and then we're going to have to kind of push the spring into place. Just like that. And now to make sure that we keep that in place, we are going to put this on. There's a notch here. It's going to match the notch on the bottom here. Like that. And then we are going to hold that in place with 4 KP screws. Just like that. These actually go in and out just fine. Now we're going to bring back this piece that we've worked on. We're going to flip it over. And then we want it going in here. Like this. And it's important that we get this right. So this end is going to go into this notch right here. And it should fit in just like that. And the final thing we're going to do is we have this piece right here, which has 2 holes in it that it's just going to sit right on there like that. And with that in place, that is all there is to do in this stage.
Bloody pull faster and pull!
And now we're back with stage 116, and we're going to continue on with this part of the remote. The first thing we're going to need is this, which is obviously the buttons. Now, do not clip these off the sprue here, because that's not what this is designed to do. It just wants you to slip it all in place just like that. Once we got that in, we're going to take the circuit board. Here's the board for all this. We got, looks like 5 buttons here. Nice and clicky. We got an on-off switch here and an LED. So obviously, we're going to want to put this in place. That's where the LED is going to go in the port. It'll sort of snap into place like that. And then we're going to hold this in place here. And once we get that in place, we're going to hold it down with 4 AP screws. And keep in mind, these are silver ones, not the black ones. So just like that. And I'm going to test the buttons. There, they all click nicely. Now we're going to be putting the back on here. Going to cover all this up. So there's that. And then once again, we're going to be screwing this down with 4 more AP screws. There we go. Now we got that all nice and intact there. Now it's time to complete the look on the back. So we're going to do just like we did on the front. I'm going to put that piece on there. And then this one doesn't have any writing on it, so just got to get it to fit in how it's got to go in. Just like that. And we're not putting a battery inside it, so we're just going to put the battery cover on. Like that. Now we're going to flip this over because now we've got the speed selector. Now this thing is quite weighty on this thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this in the center here. It should be lined up with stop, like that. So just like that, we're going to have the handle in. And we're going to hold that down with an EP screw. Now this is important. Now an important thing here is we don't want this to be too tight because this handle has to be able to move. This is our speed selector. Stand by. Sorry, I'm back now. So what was going on is obviously, this thing will go full ahead. It'll go full speed ahead. But I thought there was something wrong because it wasn't going past that point when you went astern. But I looked at the mechanism, everything is right, so unless I'm wrong, that is as far as you're going to be able to make the engines reverse. So once we got that in place and this is turning simply enough, we've got a screw cover to put into here. It's like a bolt shape. Just gonna fit right in there like that. You see it still turns nicely. It looks nice. And there she is. That's the remote that's going to control everything here. That's all there is to do in this stage. That's all there is to do in this pack. Before we go on, though, if you remember your Titanic trivia question, what prompted J. Bruce Ismay to make changes in the Titanic's original design? Was it A, a magazine write-up? B, a dream inspired him? C, a trip on the Olympic? Or was it D, a tour of the Carpathia? The answer to that question, it was C, a trip he took on the Olympic that inspired him to make changes to the original design of the Titanic. So that's it for pack 20, and this was an insane pack, but wow, we got a lot done, even though it took us a long time to do, and I think you should keep one thing in mind. This is 24 packs, so guys, that really does mean we are 4 packs away from having this thing finished. Gonna be a lot of work left to do, I'm sure you can see. Hope you're up for the task. I know I am. I'm looking forward to it. Before we go for this video, though, if you liked it, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And your Titanic trivia question for next time, I'm gonna make it a little easier on you because I know I've been giving you some trickier ones. What does the J stand for in J. Bruce Ismay's name? Was it A, John, B, James, or C, Joseph? Pretty easy one, I know, so you'll probably figure it out before long, but if not, you'll get your answer next time on the Model Frontier.